we need people to work in the business and people to work on the business.
Yeah.
And do we have the right mix and balance of those? Or are we taking the people that work in the business and making them work on the business? And they're burning the candle at both ends. And so, we're slowing down our ability to transform and change because we haven't managed the capacity and been clear about what's the most important thing.
This is the Leadership Foundry Podcast. I'm your host this week, Brandon Smith. And our guest this week is Rob Pepper. Rob is guiding strategy and transformation for Papa John's Pizza. What a cool job. Rob's been in this role. This is a new role for Papa John's for about 18 months. And prior to that role, Rob was in consulting for about 15 years, both with A.T. Kearney and McKinsey. So I love our conversation around leadership because we spent so much of our time talking about influencing and how leadership really is about influencing. So I want you to listen real close on some of the leadership lessons Rob learned through his career that I know are going to make you a better leader starting tomorrow.
Welding together practical insights and powerful conversations to forge world-class leaders. This is the Leadership Foundry Podcast.
Rob, really excited to have you on the show today. Excited to just hear not only your points of view around leadership, but I think listeners can really learn a lot around some of your journey because you've led in lots of different capacities. And sometimes you led utilizing influence almost as much as formal leadership roles. So maybe a good starting place, for folks that maybe have never encountered you before or interacted with you before, maybe a good starting place is to share with us a little bit about your journey. What's been kind of your journey up to this point, and then talk a little bit more about the seat that you're sitting in today, which is actually, I think, a really fun seat.
I'm very excited to be here today. A little bit about me, and let's maybe start kind of at the end and then we'll go to the beginning.
Nice.
So I currently lead strategy and transformation for Papa John's Pizza. And for those of you that are listening on the interwebs, we're filming this in Atlanta. Papa John's has relocated recently, and we're neighbors. So we're just around the corner from where we're filming today in the Battery. And earlier this year, we opened our brand new corporate headquarters here in Atlanta that we're very proud of, that we share space with the Atlanta Braves and a lot of other great companies in the battery space. I joined the organization about 18 months ago in this new role.
So this role didn't even exist before you joined?
No, there wasn't a strategy and transformation role before. The company, and if you know anything about our history, obviously, the last, let's say 5 years, like going back to 2017, 2018, there was a lot of hard times from the separation of our founder to kind of rethinking what the brand is going to be and the new trajectory of growth that we're on with our franchise partners and our investors. And so as part of relocating to Atlanta, there was a lot of change in the organization, from the leadership team and then, kind of levels beneath them, and new capabilities brought into the organization. And one of them is around strategy and transformation, which is a skill set that I bring from kind of my last 15 years in multiple roles in consulting. So before Papa John's, I was in consulting. I consider myself a recovering consultant in that I'm getting very used to sleeping in my own bed. And I have a couple of little people at my house that look like me that I'm building, better relationships with now that I can see them on a daily basis. But I was at A.T. Kearney and at McKinsey, A.T. Kearney for about 10 years and McKinsey for about 5. All based here in Atlanta, but really kind of a global citizen in that I traveled 4 to 5 days a week on average, as kind of is par for the course in that industry, in that field. I met you kind of just before that at Emory, where I went to business school, but I actually grew up in Florida, and my wife and I met at the University of Florida. She went to medical school, and in that period in between, I worked in investment banking. So at heart, I'm a finance data geek, and have followed kind of the love of my life to South Florida and then to to Atlanta, where she came for residency and I came for grad school. And then now this is home for us. And so it's been a great, I've really kind of taken to Atlanta. I love this city. It's a great place to live and raise a family. And if you are a person that travels a lot, it's a great place to travel from. And so, after consulting, I shifted over to the industry side with Papa John's, and it's been a very exciting year and a half. And I'm very energized and excited about where the company is going and the great things that we're going to do.
Awesome. So what I love about your role is it's like if we were to say, what is leadership all about? It's probably about executing on some kind of strategy or getting people to do things differently.
Yep.
Transforming, right?
Yep.
Transformation. So really, they just give you the title of leadership. And I don't want to make that overextend that, but it is so much about getting the organization to think differently, do things differently. And so I want to talk about that, but I want to go back a little bit. So let's go back to your consulting days. What would you say are some of the big lessons you've learned, maybe one or two, in terms of leading engagements, leading clients, things that really stood out for you that you still kind of remember to this day and try and practice to this day? Yeah.
So, as a consultant, you're a hired gun, right? And I have a friend that says he has this great expression that you're kind of all badge, no bullets, because you're an outsider into the organization, and there's no one that reports directly to you within the organization. You actually don't have any decision rights for the most part. I mean, there's some rare occasions where you might be seconded or something, and so it's all about influence. And one of the things that I think really great consultants do is they're good at affecting change through influence. And there's a really kind of neat paradigm in the consulting track, which is when you're new, when you're fresh out of undergrad or you're fresh out of business school, your work is almost solely analytical. You're building a fact base, you're understanding the problem, you're thinking about how to structure whatever solution it is that you're working on. And as you progress, your career becomes more about personal relationships in more of like the EQ than the IQ type stuff. And how do you really understand kind of the leadership journey that your clients are on and what's motivating them or demotivating them? What are the things that they're worried about? What are the things that they care about? What are the things they don't care about? And how is your role as a consultant in the particular problem you're solving going to affect not just their organization, but them personally? And so, when you're young in your career, it's all about being the best analyst, problem solver, problem structurer. And that is one particular skill set. And oftentimes people say the things that make a great analyst are not the same things that make a great partner. And so you have to transition and grow as a person in what you do. And then your work becomes much, much bigger, right? So when I left consulting, I was managing multiple projects at multiple clients at a time where I may be there a day a week. And also the team is there 4 days a week. So I have to be able to come in quickly, come up to speed, make sure that they're kind of evolving the problem and making headway, and they're meeting a certain bar in terms of deliverables and expectations, but do that in a very narrow window. And then I have to pivot and manage the relationships with clients, and what are they thinking and feeling, and how am I pre-wiring, and how am I thinking about influence, and is it kind of direct and in your face, or is it something with maybe a lighter touch? And you have to do all that very quickly. And so it's one of the exciting things about consulting is that your career kind of shifts, and it shifts very fast, because maybe 2-3 years out of undergrad or out of grad school, you're now in this more managing clients, managing multiple projects, and it is when people say that there's like a tremendous learning curve in the consulting world, a lot of what they're talking about is, yeah, you have a lot of responsibility in managing projects, but your career progresses faster in thinking about how you manage the people aspect of getting really great work done.
This is a totally unfair question, Rob, but how did you get better at that? What were the things that you either started to do that helped you make that transition? Because I think while this absolutely is true in consulting, I see it true with some of my clients that are like regional vice presidents or group vice presidents where they've got a region, right? And they've got to be able to come in quickly, work with that branch or that team. But then they also have maybe major customers and clients that they also need to interface with. And the next week, it's another set. So they've got to be able to do all that, like you said, very efficiently and effectively.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's the kind of first order things, which is you have to be good at time management and attention to detail and objectives driven. I think when it comes to working in a team and this is a little bit of the sausage making, but the more you're on the same page and the more clear you are in how you communicate and what the objective is and what you're focused on. So I know like this may sound super, super basic to a lot of folks, but we would have problem solving sessions, which is this time that, I come in and as an junior partner or partner and working with the team, that session has been set up by someone on my team, and there's a particular flow and structure to that. Today, we're going to focus on this in the agenda. What I need you to make decisions on is X, Y, and Z. Where I have a question that I'm not clear on and I really need your expertise and insight is A, B, and C. And so there's this shorthand language because we're all working in the same communication style, in the same structure. And I was at a dinner last night, and I was trying to explain this to someone. It's like when you go, like very early on at McKinsey, I remember getting this email. Like I had sent an email out and I got this email back and said, hey, I can tell you didn't come up through the firm, which was basically a very nice way of saying this isn't acceptable. And it was because I didn't have a lot of structure in the communication I'd written. And so, you hear about like case examples in the interview process, and that's really not about seeing how smart you are. You wouldn't have gotten to the interview if you weren't smart. It's about how your brain works and how structured, and everything is structured. The way you get out of bed is structured. The way you eat breakfast is structured. The way you approach problems is structured. And it is that structure, it's that shorthand that we all use. And I think of it like, lawyers that take the LSAT, and the reason that like you need to take the LSAT is because logic is paramount. And so for us, the shorthand is logic. And one of my big lessons early on is like I see a lot of organizations that waste a lot of time on things that are not actually in pursuit of the objective or building a better team, or are just plain inefficient because they were never clear on the objective and they were never clear in the shorthand and the communication. And whether that comes up into team building or not, like it or just how you think about your day in the organization is paramount. I think the other thing that really helped me is you got to have great mentors, and you got to be in a place where feedback is a gift, and you have to look at it that way. And so, the way that you improve, whether you're an athlete or a corporate athlete, is by kind of measuring and being like working on very specific things. But in athlete, if I'm an athlete and I'm running the 40-yard dash or swimming a race or something, I have a coach all the time. In the professional world, you don't always have that. And so like you get this structure of feedback in consulting, whether it's at the end of meetings or the end of projects, like the cycle is much faster. And then you have what I call sponsors and you have mentors, and there's a difference between those things. But that bond with your mentor to give you feedback is paramount. And so like now when I've come in to the call it the non-consulting world, I've brought a lot of the rhythms and behaviors around people management that I use to be successful in running teams and big projects in how I give feedback, because the faster my guys come up to speed and are able to operate, above their level, quite frankly, the easier my job is. The more time I have to do the things I want to do because I need to manage them less.
I love that. So I want to pivot into kind of that transition into where you are today. But before we do that, you dropped a little nugget there that I want to go back to. You said, there's a difference between sponsors and mentors. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of went on.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the difference, because I think both of those are important.
I'm glad you picked up on that. And this is something I talk about, and I didn't get it until kind of late in my consulting career. So I'll frame it like this. A sponsor will open up an opportunity for you. They'll say, you know what, this is a great time for you to come and present, or for you to be in the room. Right? They're the ones that give you the platform, the voice. They may give you some coaching on how to position it, but they're creating a professional opportunity. It is in the spirit of inclusion and growth. A mentor says, let me take you out to coffee. What's working and not working for you? How can I be supportive to you? How's your life outside of this place? It is a more personal relationship, focused not on your professional outcomes, but you as the person outcomes. And one of the things that I'm particularly proud of that I do with my teams, I did this in consulting and I do it now, is when we do our kind of look, like our planning for the year, right? It's easy. I break it into 3 buckets. There is an organizational objective, right? My team has to do X, Y, and Z in terms of very hard deliverables. They need to build this tool. They need to improve this process. That's bucket 1. And everybody has some responsibility, and like all good, smart-based objectives, there's like timelines and whatnot put against that. The second group is, how are you going to grow professionally? And this is the connection to sponsorship. Mm-hmm. So are you going to get some opportunities to speak to ELT members or franchise members or board people? Like, do you need to go work in a different part of the business, and how are we going to get you exposure to that? But it's all about, professionally. And it may be things like, hey, this is where you need to get more of a voice, and what does that sound like, and how does that feel, and how do you prepare to it? But it's like personal development versus deliverable based. And then there's a third category, and I make them write this down to me. Give me your work-life balance goals. And I'm not going to obviously grade you and compensate you on it, but like, you're a whole person when you come to work, and whether it's, hey, I really want to have time twice a week to play tennis or pickleball. Or for me, it's like, I want to shoot a certain score on the golf course and I need to have some time to practice. I have a guy that works for me that just got engaged, and he had some very specific things that he wanted to get done to be ready for married life. And so those were the things. And like, it really, when we do our check-ins as a team, we do them one-on-one and we do kind of team check-ins. We have this like accountability, and I can say to someone, hey, did you play tennis this week? Did you make it home to make dinner? That was your thing. Are you doing that? And it really connects you in a way of, hey, this isn't just a place I come to work. It's somebody who cares about me and takes interest. And for me, as a person who loves checklists, I know that like I have this protected time on my calendar to check in with my team, the person, not just, did you get this deliverable done?
How often do you have those conversations?
We have them monthly, but we do team check-ins 3 times a week, 15-minute stand-ups where we're just, hey, are you doing these things? Okay. Right? And so, but the actual formal, we review the sheet and it's a 1-pager. Here's the 3 things you have to do. We do that every month.
Wow. Okay. So let's make that pivot over into Papa John's. So now you've kind of moved into kind of on the in-house side, right? Has that changed any of your approaches to leadership? Anything that you've learned you already talked about some things you've taken from your prior experiences that you've learned that have worked, and you're using those, redeploying those. Anything else you've learned to add to the mix that, maybe is unique to the situation that you're in, or unique to being on the kind of in-house side?
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about is people ask me often, is there anything you miss about consulting? And beyond the like endless supply of hotel points and, upgrades and things like that. One of the things I miss is the power of the per diem. And I don't know if this is like a real thing, but it's like something I've coined, which is when I was at any of these firms, my daily rate was significant. And that's not a like point about ego. It's a point about that's what the billable rate was. And clients don't like paying consultants money because they would rather build that capability internal. What it means is like it creates this instant urgency, right? Because the faster I get fill in the name of blank of any consultant out of here, the sooner I don't have to pay that bill. And it's all about urgency and priority. And then when you're internal, you have to find a way to communicate the sense of urgency and the objective of change and the transformation, vision without necessarily having the burning platform of, hey, the swarm of people are going to show up and they're charging us a lot of money. So if we don't get them out of here soon. So, it's more about like you have to build a relationship and you have to be more crystal on what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. I had a conversation recently with some of our executive members and they said something to me and that really resonated, which was, Pepper, I didn't really understand what it is that you're doing in this role, but I get it now, which is you're helping us think about the way we work and make decisions as an organization. And I thought, okay, that like for all my years, I wish I could have like come up with that as like my own, and I'm going to ruthlessly steal it. But but they were exactly right? Which is in my role of strategy and transformation, I'm constantly helping us think about, what is the objective that's going to move the needle for us as a company on this transformation? And are we all clear? Are we all kind of rowing in the same direction on it? Do we understand who's making the decision when we get to those points where decisions are made? And do we have the right capacity? And I think I took this from you actually, which is we need people to work in the business and people to work on the business. Yeah. And do we have the right mix and balance of those? Or are we taking the people that work in the business and making them work on the business? And they're burning the candle at both ends. And so, we're slowing down our ability to transform and change because we haven't managed the capacity and been clear about what's the most important thing.
I love that, Rob. So one of the big questions I've been asking my clients a lot recently as a coach, because they'll get in this place in their career, kind of like where you're at and, kind of in this place where they continue to want to lead and they continue to want to get more leadership opportunities, but they find themselves doing a lot of the work. So I often ask them the question, I said, do you want to be an MVP or do you want to build a world championship? Because those are two very different things. So we think about things like you described, like how we do the work and how we make decisions. That's more of a head coach kind of a role. You're on the sidelines of the clipboard. Now, I know Papa John's has lots of head coaches, and then they need lots of head coaches, lots of kinds of coaches on the staff. But I think that's an important way to think about leadership because you can be an MVP on a mediocre team. And we see that all the time.
Sure.
Right? We see in every sport, right? Where someone's pulling the weight, but the rest of the team around them isn't aligned in how they do the work or how they're making decisions. Yep. So there's not coordination of the plays. And then you also see the flip side. Sometimes you see teams, then you say to yourself, they really don't have any one good player on the team. How did they become good this season?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they've got this great record because they figured out those components that you mentioned.
Well, two things there. I mean, the second is the Moneyball situation, right? Which is they figured out what matters and they focus on that. So, it's less about hitting home runs and more about getting on base and getting runs around, like to keep that.
And you told me you weren't a baseball guy.
And
look at that. That was fantastic, Rob.
But it's but they're very clear And, both in consulting and I would say even more recently, sometimes I run into a situation where people don't understand, and this is maybe a little bit of the old finance guy in me, is like, don't understand how we make money as an organization or what's important to us as an organization. And I link that to like the P&L, revenue, net income, growth, like all the things that are our strategic objectives. So, but there's something else there that you said, and I go back to my days of consulting where, there's lots of jokes about, parachuting in on teams and, like we don't have to go down that path. But one of the things to be a partner you have to be very good at is you have to be able to come in quickly and kind of assess the situation and what's going on. The other thing, and no one ever talks about this, and it kind of struck me when you said MVP versus coach, is there's a fundamental trust and quality issue that has to be addressed there. So if I'm on site or if I'm one person in an organization, I can't change it. I can't change it. If I'm on site for a day or if I'm one person in an organization, I can't change it. I have to have we have to have a common vision, understanding of the quality, and then I have to trust that you're going to play second base and I'm going to play first base, and I know you're going to do your job and I'm going to do my job, and when we do our job together, like we're going to win. But it's when I have to think about doing second base and first base that like it's just too much. And when we were at McKinsey, or when I was at McKinsey, and we would talk about this concept of what does it take to transform a business. The best CEO in the world cannot transform a company by themselves. What the research tells you is, depending on the size of the organization, how big the transformation is, you need somewhere between 30 and 60 people, right? And you need to have those people in the right roles. So think about like the big things that you're doing, right? And it may be the top leadership, but it's probably not. It may be the influencers in the organization. But you need to have your MVPs in the positions that are going to drive the most value for the thing you're trying to do. And that is oftentimes something I see organizations stumble with, is like, the real opportunity to change maybe, say like in an international business unit or in, this new emerging business unit. And the person that we have kind of allocated in that role actually isn't the MVP. And we need to think about, okay, do we take an emerging star and go put him in this role? And he has to understand, or she has to understand that, my job in this case is to play second base and be the best second baseman ever. And if I do that, then the team's going to win. And that's a thing that like in transformations, this idea that one person can do it, one person can change a company. Even like, there's a lot of news this week about, I'll say Twitter got a new leader, right?
Right.
One person can't change a company. They can maybe ruin the culture of a company, but they can't change a company by themselves because it's just too big of a thing. It's a living organism. It has to like work together. So
nice way, because we're going to start to kind of land our plane here, but I want to go back full circle because you mentioned early on, you said one of those big pivot points that changed between kind of analyst to partner, that one of the big inflections is that ability to start to think about other people's needs, other people's wants, other people's leadership goals, other people's interests, some of those things. And why I think that's such an important connection is when we're thinking about a head coach, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about this, the world championship, right? It's this thing. We're going to do this together to get this. But it's about an MVP. No, it's either about me or it's about there's only one MVP, right? So, and I think there's just that simple orientation. You remind us that if we go in with this idea of, I'm going to win or I'm going to do all these things so then I get the next promotion, people are going to feel that. And then they're not going to, and then they're not going to want to cover second base. They're going to let that ball kind of get through the infield and going to roll into the outfield because they're going to sense it's about you. So I think you remind us that it's about kind of setting that common mutual goal, and then also defining what is winning and what are the metrics we need to get there. And also going back to what you said too, it's a lot easier to create the natural urgency when consultants come in because there's a line item and there's a dollar attached to that, and it's like a taxi. There's a meter. Right?
Yeah, it's always running.
and versus when you're inside an organization, that's all fixed cost. It's there. So how do you've got to create another way to measure that thing that has enough spice to it that creates that heat.
Which it's like I was literally in a meeting yesterday, and it's my big transformation meeting for the month, and someone said, in our organization we like to talk about putting hot sauce on things that are priorities, and I almost texted you to say, like, I wish you just would have heard what was said. Like this is a full 3-bottle hot sauce, right?
Nice.
So I was like, it's starting to take root. People are getting it. Along the way, and I used it both in consulting and I use it now sometimes, is this metaphor I picked up, which is I think it was Tony Dungy, but maybe it was somebody else that once said, my job as a coach is to demand and to teach. And oftentimes I've kind of morphed that a little bit to say my job oftentimes is one part personal trainer, right? I got to make you eat your broccoli. I'm going to make you follow this process. You're not going to like it. Everyone likes process until it doesn't benefit them, and then they don't like process anymore. But like, you got to do the sit-ups. You got to eat less red meat. You got to eat your broccoli, right? Like it's some bit, personal trainer. And then it's some part professor, which is I'm going to partner with you as a thought partner, and we're going to go on this learning journey together, and your ideas and my ideas, and like steel's going to sharpen steel, and we're going to get to better ideas because we're doing it together. And, I may have some subject matter expertise. You're going to look at that problem completely differently. And you're going to tell me something about operations that I didn't register and pick up. And we're going to have this open debate and forum, and we're going to get to a better outcome. And that's the professor part of the job, is this open debate and discussion. But then we're going to align, and we're going to go back to the personal trainer, and we're going to run very hard in kind of trying to build our capability and our speed and our agility, like all the things. So like I've always kind of used that metaphor and thought, in this meeting or in this effort, what hat am I wearing right now, and like what's my role and what's my job, and what's the best way to do that, right? Like sometimes the personal trainer thing, like as I'm learning right now, I just got a new personal trainer. Like as I'm learning, like you don't go from 0 to Olympic powerlifter. Like you have to maybe kind of build into it a little bit. And so that's part of the process as well.
Yeah. Rob, this is great. So I ask all my guests on the Leadership Foundry podcast, so what's one practical leadership hack for us that we can start doing tomorrow to make us better leaders, more effective leaders?
Yeah. So for me, it is practicing leadership from this place of gratitude and practicing gratitude. And, I find that my energy changes, my outlook on life changes, the way I engage the people in my life personally and professionally, it changes. And so I have a little thing where in the morning I write down 3 things I'm thankful for that day. And I spend a few moments doing it. I think there's this trap of like overscheduling capacity, and I make a routine and a practice of finding time to practice gratitude and to tell people that I am grateful for them. You may get this random emotional text from me. Hey, I'm just like thinking about our conversation yesterday. I'm so glad that you're on my team, and the way you came and brought that whatever it was to life was just fantastic. Nice. But that to me, it really changes the energy in the room and with myself and my outlook on life. And I think that, we're all super busy and we're all multitasking, but like to have some space for just yourself is good. And I think that the gratitude often leads to me to creativity. And when you're creative, you solve problems in a better way.
Fantastic. So if people want to learn more about you, follow you, where can they go?
Yeah, I have a real memorable name. I'm Rob Pepper. I'm like spicy pepper and like hot sauce pepper.
Yep.
And I'm on LinkedIn and I work at Papa John's, so it's pretty easy to find me.
Rob, this was awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me.
Coming on.
This has been great. A lot of fun. I'm not scared of podcasts anymore. So
I'm glad. Yeah. We achieved. We're already making progress.
Yeah. Thank you.
Set a goal. We executed on it. Done.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I love that conversation with Rob. I thought it was so helpful, really help us kind of hone in on some of those key things. So I'm not going to go over all my notes, but a few things stood out for me. First, I love that idea of a consultant going from analyst to partner, and the big difference is learning all about people, being able to ask the right questions, learn about needs, wants, motivations, and fears. I think that as leaders, we need to be able to do that really well. And then he talked about also being able to go in, whether you're working with project teams or others, and being able to really ask the right questions, knowing how to drive clarity and create structure in those conversations. And then finally, he talked about the importance of feedback. Feedback being an important, not only gift for us, but how we get better. And he gave us two great kinds of sources of feedback. He said there's sponsors, which can give you feedback, but they open up doors for us. They give us opportunities. And then mentors. These are those folks that pull us aside and say, how are things going? Let me give you some help. We support you. And how are things going outside of work that can kind of help us and guide us along the way? So Rob gave us many, many more beyond that. I'm sure you've got some takeaways on your own. But with all the Leadership Foundry podcasts, the goal is for you to take away one thing starting today that will make you a better leader tomorrow.